Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Making Action Happen. I am Sarah Blackhurst.
And I'm Brian McCain.
We have so much to catch you up on today. So it's just Brian and I in the studio. When you hear this, it'll be into the first real week of February. Today is Groundhog Day for us. And my mom reminded me this morning that my dad, when he was wanting to be a punk, used to always take Groundhog Day off because he thought, we're taking days off for all these other things. So he would literally take Groundhog Day off every year, which was pretty adorable.
Would he watch the movie Groundhog all day?
No, gosh, no. He would pet around the house and, he didn't, I don't know what he would do, but he'd call us all and be like, I'm taking Groundhog Day off. And we'd be like, that's great, Daddy.
That's funny. Can't argue with that.
No, he was that kind of guy. So by the time you're hearing this, like I said, we'll be deep into the week, but we have so much to catch you up on. The number one and maybe the most exciting is this big change we've been telling everybody about, and there's been lots of whispers about, and it's officially official as of this broadcast, and we are...
we are no longer Action 22, but Action Colorado.
Action Colorado. So this was sort of a long time coming as far as what we needed to do and how we do better. So when our oldest son Ferris was a little dude, just like little, we loved this movie Bug's Life. And I've been thinking a lot about that movie later. It's a Pixar movie. It's really cute and poignant. But we've had a lot of conversations in the last couple of years. One of the great things about what we do is that a lot of candidates join our organization, and then we get to have really in-depth talks with them as they're going through their campaign. And why that's so special is because we know that our discussions are nonpartisan. They're focused on the issues. We get to see everybody's perspective, and we get to help them see the perspectives of those people that they're helping, or that they want to serve and represent. And so they get some insights. And so one of the people that we've talked with a lot is Adam Frisch. He's actually become a pretty good friend of ours. He's been a big supporter of Action 22. He knows about this change. He's really excited about it. But he said something to me when I saw him the other night that I thought really gave me a perspective that was really important. He said, of course, we all know there's 64 counties in in Colorado. And of those 64 counties, he says there's two kinds of counties. There's the counties that consume, and then there's the counties that produce. He said, think about that. And that hit me so hard. That landed right in the center of my forehead, especially surrounding what we're talking about. So of the counties, so here's the interesting part. Of the counties that consume, they have the numbers to win elections. And for whatever reason, those that are elected, the counties that consume, whoever they elect to represent them or to be the decision makers, don't really take into consideration the needs of those counties that produce.
Yeah, it's like that federally, though, too, because that's the flyover states. It's somebody wrote about it. It's been talked. It was around World War II or after World War II that America was divided between the consumption states and the producing states. And that's part of why we have the Electoral College, and the argument for that was, that the votes are the consumers, and you tend to overlook the producers of it because they just don't have the numbers. So whether it's Colorado, the United States, or even the world, it's kind of the argument. It's like the people that control the narrative are the consumers, which is kind of like, companies. That's almost like the free market. But the producers, and we're not talking about like iPhones or technology or products. We're talking about food, mostly food. You can add energy, oil, gas, solar, wind, all that. Yep. Food, so what we eat. But those are the producers, and they tend to get overlooked. And That was the argument when Trump won the first time, that the flyover states were kind of the Trump states. So it was like the producing states, the producers were the Trump people. And that even gets into the manufacturers and the people working in oil and gas and, even a lot of the unions, even though they may have endorsed Biden, I think a lot of their membership actually supported Trump or voted for Trump at least. And when he brought that up with Colorado, I'm used to thinking of it on a national scale, but as far as just a Colorado scale, it's completely true. It's 100% true.
So here's what's the really interesting thing, because I've been thinking about it for the last week since he said that to me, and I thought, so the consumer counties have the vote; they get to make the decisions. The decision makers on that public policy, they're not making decisions on behalf of the producers. But here's what's interesting: the producing counties can still function without the consumer, but the consumer can't function without the producer.
Yep.
So, I'll have to Google it, but you're seeing these farmers protest. I think it's in France or I saw that. That was kind of cool.
The argument that they're saying, it's like you guys are making all these rules and hindering us and all these regulations that's hurting our industry. So what happens if we just stop producing?
If we stop producing.
And that's where you're seeing it, not here as much, but overseas in the European countries.
So it makes you wonder. So then the other thing that we've been thinking on and trying to figure out how to navigate in the last couple of years is there used to be a really healthy, robust, what we call a stakeholdering process. And that has gone away for a lot of reasons. And I don't know that anybody is trying to do that, but there's all this pressure to get 750 to 1,000 bills listened to, and this is that's just on the legislative side. I was talking with Garrison Ortiz this morning, and he said he was explaining our organization to somebody, and he said, all you really focus on is the legislative side of what we do. He goes, you have no idea what they do beyond the legislative piece. Yeah. And so here's what we came up with, and we want to share with you. So it's going to be so we're now Action Colorado or Action CO.
So basically, take the logo and just take away the 22 and replace it with the CO, which was really easy to design because I didn't have to do anything. Although I did have to download the old font because for some reason Illustrator cut out the font. Which for all you design nerds out there, I'm kind of upset with Illustrator and Premiere Pro at the moment, but it's a whole other show. Instead of Action 22, it is Action Colorado.
It's Action Colorado. So it's not just enough to take a position anymore. That used to be primarily, we would, especially on the legislative side, we take a position of support, oppose, amend, or need more information.
Yep.
Or that was the neutral side. What we need to do is we know that we need to be a leader in saying what needs to happen. We have to go beyond taking a position.
Yeah, it's not reacting defensively. It's being proactive,
right,
in the issues, and it's still our concentration is Southern Colorado and rural Colorado. So one of the fears was that we're kind of abandoning Southern Colorado, which is not true.
Absolutely not.
In fact,
Absolutely
not a lot has changed as far as our organization goes, as our board, our leadership, our membership. But what it does, it gives us the opportunity to kind of split it up in committees to closely track some of the stuff that's going on, take a proactive stance on it, and be aggressive in protecting rural Colorado as a whole, not just Southern Colorado. And one of the reasons why we set this up too is the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis is Action 22 are the same issues that all of rural Colorado deals with. Now there's, some issues that are different on the western slope in northern Colorado, but for the most part, what we concentrate on, rural Colorado is on the same page. And what this does, it gives us the opportunity to kind of expand our influence and our membership and be more proactive in defending our way of life in rural Colorado.
Absolutely. So in order to do that, what we did is we created a structure that opened the doors to more and invited more key players to the table. And so this isn't based just on a geographic location, although it's southern and rural.
Yep.
Outside the Denver metro area is our focus. And we're, like Brian said, we're so southern Colorado, it's in our blood.
Yeah.
But it also ensures that the stakeholder process is honored. That was really, really important to us.
And it's important to note that, as it's stated with the state, the stakeholder process is the ballot, and anything beyond that's a privilege and not a right. But we need to remind them that they serve us, and that it is our privilege and their privilege to serve us and to have them serving us, if that makes sense.
It does.
They serve at the privilege of the people, so you can't just cut out the stakeholdering process with the ballot. I think that was a poor excuse, and it was said by multiple state legislators on both sides saying, the stakeholder process was me being elected, and I just don't buy that.
Well, and along that vein, we saw exactly the best example of that is exactly what we saw with Proposition HH. Yeah. Proposition HH was defeated by like a 2/3.
Yep.
And then within 2 weeks, the legislature had a special session, and they largely gave Colorado what was in HH to begin with. So when they say the voting is the stakeholder process, that's not true.
Yeah. And
it's just not true.
That because the ballot did speak on that, but apparently they didn't listen.
They didn't listen. So the other part of it is that we have a lot of expertise, and so it's going to that is within our membership. So this will switch it to be laser focused on issues over that rural geographic area. So outside the Denver area with experts.
With the experts sitting at the table.
Yeah. So we're going to tell you about that in just a second. But first, we just wanted to share what the new mission is. It's to represent and take action on the unique needs and issues of Colorado stakeholders who live and operate outside of the Denver metro area. We operate through a nonpartisan lens to be strategically impactful on behalf of our members, predominantly rooted in rural and southern Colorado. So that's our new mission. We're really excited about it.
Yeah.
We've actually been workshopping this new strategy for about 6 months or so.
Yeah, and we split it up in a way that makes sense based off of what we were already covering. So if you go to like the Action 22 website, it says, what are the issues that we're concerned with? How we broke it down for this is to actually have committees to address those issues. So we have agriculture, veterans, which is something that in the past we haven't been that involved with, but there is a need for it now, specifically for a lot of our veteran population moving to the rural areas. And you've just seen that kind of explode across Colorado, across the country. Infrastructure, which includes energy, broadband, transportation, environmental regulation. Local government, which includes land use, tax policy, public safety, and homelessness. And economic development, which is workforce, housing, education, and healthcare. And that's how it's split up. And we're going to have board chairs on each one, and they're going to submit, not board chairs, committee chairs on each one, and they select the people that are going to sit at the table, bring in the experts so we can proactively address the issues that we're facing in Colorado right now, rural Colorado and southern Colorado. And to be fair, and all of Colorado, it's not just rural that's dealing with these issues.
And they're operating in rural Colorado because they know that's where it has to happen. So along that vein, we want to hear what your input is, what input you have. And for our members, if there's any of these committees that you're interested in, let us know, and we're going to send out an email asking for that input. We're not putting any provisions because really the Action 22 board is 100% bought in on this, and they're the ones that designed the structure, which I think is really important to note, because what we needed them to do is take a bigger role in helping us gather that. It's just too much for us, the two of us, to do. So what they'll do is they'll turn around and say, here's what action needs to happen with all of these. And so this is everybody that we've talked to about, and we've probably visited between the two of us with our board and members of the community, people who were involved with Action 22 in the past, even Kathy Garcia, who put together she was the original creator of Action 22. All of these people have been really excited about this direction. And I think part of it is because we are inviting more people to the table.
Yep.
So it can be our partner organizations or anything like that. We need your voice. We need your expertise. We need to have everybody do more than take a position. We need you to say, this is what needs to happen and why. So we're excited about that. So there's two other updates I need to give you. We are the Academy. So we are going to do the action or the
Leadership Policy and Governance Academy.
Golly.
So that'll be launching soon. I'm going to send everything out first part of next week. It'll be on the website, which is now actioncolorado.org. But if you still punch in Action 22, it'll go to it. So action22.org or actioncolorado.org. Our academy is going to launch probably the end of March. We pushed it back a little bit just because the largest complaint we had of it was it snows. The roads are terrible.
The roads are terrible
in the winter. So we wanted to push it back towards spring a little bit. And that way there's maybe less missed days from people driving from all over to go to. And I think we're going to take it on the road this time. So if anybody's interested in that, just send me an email, Brian at actioncolorado.org or Brian at action22.org, any of those. Just send me an email, go on our website, and let me know that you're interested. That's the first class of that was a success, and
Huge
all of them will
success.
attest that it's a lot of information, a lot of learning, and just the camaraderie that comes out of it is amazing amongst local leaders in the region, not just in one area.
And we've seen amazing things, that networking, that creating all that synergy there were some amazing results from that. So we want, so that will happen again. Be aware and be ready to either nominate somebody or to enter that class yourself. So we'll have that information out to you soon. Okay. So the stuff everybody should be paying attention to and the stuff that we've been working on.
So broadband is a big one that Sarah's been heavily involved with the past constantly, but more so right now than we have been in the past. So what's going on with broadband?
So I'll tell you that we created this broadband committee March of last year. And I had promised at that time, and I've said it a bunch, and if you've already heard this, I apologize, but Brian, I had promised Brian we weren't going to get into broadband anymore. But we had a number of members come to us and say, hey, we need your help. And I thought I could get it done in one meeting. I'm really glad that I didn't let it go in one meeting, and I'll tell you why. There's two really big reasons. One is that we, without really intending to, we use that broadband committee as a way to, as a model really for what we were going to do on a broader scale with Action Colorado. And the way that we did that is we just invited members who were experts to the table. And we had a couple new members because they saw the value in having these discussions on that higher level. These are folks who, if you're in the broadband business, you would know their names, but they really brought a lot of things to light on how we, especially with all of this money that's supposed to be coming to Colorado, should happen. So here's what's going to happen, or here's what's happening, and there's some frustration. So you'll hear that in my voice with regard to this. We've been working on this for about 6 months. What happened was, as this money came out, the most logical way to deploy the money to get, and the idea of this was to get high speed, low cost, or affordable broadband to 100% of homes in Colorado. That was the governor's executive order. Yep. That was the intent. And we said, yeah, we agree with this. This is great.
By what date?
So the first round of that was that first round of that was well, everything was supposed to be done by the end of 24.
Yeah.
So like all the plans and all of that was supposed to be done by the end of 24 because there are two tranches of money, of federal money that would come to Colorado, and then Colorado makes the decision on how that money is dispersed. Somewhere in that, and I'm really going to make some people angry, somewhere in that, CDOT decided that it would be a good idea to get into the broadband game. So they wanted to create an additional revenue source on the backs of broadband. I don't know how to say it nicer.
So they wanted to charge people and communities to basically CDOT would own the broadband, and then they would charge a usage fee for it, correct?
Yeah. So there was a right-of-way fee that came up, and there's a question as to whether the language, both the federal language and the state language, that's even in the statute, and it's a cost recovery. But this is a per foot.
At market rate value, right?
At market rate value is what they're saying.
Profit.
Yeah.
Yes.
So market rate value, and so it was per foot per year. So when you're talking about rural communities, that's a tremendous amount. So they said, here's the amount, and then everybody kind of lost their mind. And so now, they're like, well, we've reduced the amount.
But it's important to say for rural communities, for Denver, that's okay. Because you're talking about, our metro community, wherever it's at, you're talking like 2 miles worth of broadband in a city or county that has a very high revenue, and it's not a big deal. But then you go into small mountain towns, small rural towns, small plains towns, you're talking hundreds of miles of broadband for a community or city or county that has no budget whatsoever, where $10,000 can make or break a county right now.
There's a great example, to your point, there's a great example of under the current proposal of a structure in a fiber that would go from Kim to Trinidad. There's a proposal from CCOM, and John Saunders is one of our experts. From Kim to Trinidad, it would be $10,000 per year. And that's on top of the initial installation costs, which, by the way, is what all other utilities do. So this is not something that other utilities have to pay for it on this right-of-way fee. So this is just for broadband.
Yep.
So they saw broadband, they saw a pot of money, they said this is a way for CDOT to make some more money. So, but what we're talking about in that $10,000 a year, we're talking about maybe at the most 75 households that would serve.
Because it doesn't matter, because everybody has to have the opportunity to connect to high-speed internet or broadband per the governor's executive order.
Correct.
So if there's one person that lives 30 miles away, then they're going to have to fork over the cash to ensure that person has the capability to connect to broadband.
Now, I want to make something really, really clear with regard to these providers, and whether it's a local government, a county, or if it is a private provider, like a CCOM. They do not have a problem with the process, and they're not asking to be forgiven for installation. What they're saying is, we shouldn't. We are under all these regulations to provide this, to do all these other things, but you're costing us out of it.
Yeah.
So right now there is a bill. It's supposed to go to committee next week about this and how we could do some legislative relief on this. And we've taken into account what other states around us, because several of the experts on the our broadband committee work in other states. So we know what those fees are and what all of that is. The question really is it appropriate or fair for CDOT to take over broadband in Colorado? And that's really what we're talking about, is all these barriers that are being put up. Should broadband pay for roads and bridges in Colorado?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here. So that bill is up. There's some things that have been proposed in that bill. There's lots of discussion, as you might imagine, around this. There's a lot of very unhappy people at CDOT about this. The Joint Technology Committee, I understand, is discussing this bill right now, and we'll see what happens on Wednesday the 7th when this bill is supposed to go in front of the committee. But what we're talking about is, are we actually going to? Would CDOT be able to deliver to those households if they were in charge of it? Can that be done? A lot of providers have gone back to, because the next tranche. So here's the other problem: the next tranche of BEAD money. There needs to be a report next month given to the federal government for those funds to be released. The timing on this is really, really, really tight to have this figured out. And for the record, the federal government wasn't comfortable with this initially. They weren't. They were trying to put it all on local government. There were several things they did, and so they came back and they said, "You're going to have to redo your plan." Yeah. And so they've been working to redo the plan, but there's a lot of discussion on middle mile and a lot of other things. This is not middle mile. This is access to broadband to homes, to directly to homes. So this is going to be a big fight, and all that decision is going to be made, how this works out in the next little bit. I think it's going to get really messy. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with it. We'll see what happens. When they have the committee hearing, are you going to be up there? I will be up there to testify. Several members of our committee will be up there to testify. And so... who's going to testify or support not our stance? So we're obviously taking a stance. There has to be a fix on this. There has to be some relief. Who is coming from the other side? CDOT. CDOT's gonna definitely be there to try to argue their position. And there is something, to be fair, there is something in the federal statutes that say that there can be a recovery of cost. But there's somewhere, there's somewhere, and it depends on who you talk to, it could be interpreted as fair market value. That's what I was going to ask. Now, the really key part of fair market value is you have to look at what other region states, what other So when we looked at what other states are doing, and we have 5 or 6 surrounding states that, because it's really hard it's apples and oranges if you're talking Virginia versus Kansas, they're two different things. So, and what they charge for that and how that goes. So, if it's fair market value, then those other states aren't nobody else is charging an annual per foot fee. Yeah. That's a new one here in Colorado. Yeah, that's where I think it's going to get into some weird issue where the feds may say, but Colorado's unique, and we've talked about it. I hate to beat a dead horse that we do stuff different with federal money, so the federal government sometimes does not know how to address Colorado, and they just kind of let us do our own thing. They don't, and there's some value in that autonomy and us trying to figure out certain things because. And so I'm not saying the federal government should come in and say, you need to do it this way, you need to do it that way. No, not at all. But that should be ours. The federal government's not going to have the time, want, or capacity to come in and step in, even if it's not per federal regulations on how it's spent. I think that they're just going to be like, oh, it's just Colorado being Colorado. Next. So, and I think the other problem is, and pun intended, we don't have time to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. So on this, because if we don't have that, we just don't get the money. We just lose out. Yeah, exactly. So we have to get it. We have to get it done. However it's going to go forward, it has to be done now, or the money goes away. But our objective is different than CDOT's objective. Yes. Our objective is affordable, high-speed internet directly to the home, and we agree with the governor's executive order on that, and then the legislative order on that. High-speed internet directly to the home, and CDOT's objective seems to be to own or create another source of revenue off of this. Yeah. And so I think that's where we've gotten into the weeds on this.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Anyway, we'll keep you posted on that. It's a really big deal. But it's all going to be decided in the next couple of months.
So then going forward, something exciting here in Pueblo happened. So Sarah was part of the PISAC committee, which I never remember what it stands for, but it's Pueblo Innovative Energy Solutions Advisory Committee. So basically what PISAC was is it's a group of community leaders that got together to figure out what to do with the Comanche power plant that Xcel owns here in Pueblo, which, by the way, is, I think, the largest coal-fired power plant this side of the Mississippi. And again, we've talked about this a million times on the show, but due to regulations and renewable energy mandates and clean energy mandates, the closure date for Comanche has been pushed back to what is it?
For Comanche 3?
Yes.
It's 2031. It has to be shut down
by 2031.
January 1st, 2031.
So what this committee did was get together and try to figure out what would be best to replace Comanche 3. And I'll act like I'm interviewing you on this. So,
perfect.
So basically, we have this push for renewable green energy in Colorado. That's what it is. It's not a suggestion. It's not a recommendation. It's we will do this in Colorado, which is you could argue the good and bads of it, and we're not here to do that with this. So
it might be.
Well, yeah, we might be. But looking at this, so Comanche 3 doesn't generate any power for Pueblo. So get that out of the way. And this kind of ties into the argument because people say, why are we going to put a certain energy source to replace Comanche 3 when it doesn't even power Pueblo? We don't get the benefits. Not true. So Comanche 3 provides tax revenue, and Comanche 3 was supposed to be open until
2070.
So they're basically, we'll put this in layman's terms because it gets very complicated with taxes. So it's going to be up and running until 2070, and Pueblo County and the city, is it both the city and county get money from it?
Yes. So this is separate from jobs.
Yes, this is just the tax. So the tax base that it provides to the community was an expected source of money until 2070.
Until 2070.
Now, that's not going to happen.
It's 2031.
2031. So you're looking at almost...
Well, it's 2030. I mean, really,
yeah, you're looking at 40 years of guaranteed tax revenue gone, right?
Yeah. So also keep in mind that it's Comanche 3. So Comanche 1 has already been shut down.
Yep.
Comanche 2 gets shut down next year.
Yep. And then Comanche 3 is the newer one that they built.
And it's a newer one. It's the high-tech one. It's all of the stuff that they said we were going to need to do. Yep. And there's lots of finance and all of that.
Yep.
But right now, just FYI, right now, and they have 3 owners of that asset. But the biggest owner, of course, is Xcel Energy.
Yep. They're kind of the boss.
So between between those 3 right now, they generate about $19 million a year in revenue.
And that's
just for Comanche 3.
Just for Comanche 3. So that's the money that comes in. When that goes away, that money goes away. So how do we replace this with something similar that provides the tax revenue over time and also the jobs? So the second part of this equation is how many people work at Comanche 3? How many people are going to be impacted by this? 300?
Just about, yes, between both of them. So here,
so like 300 people are basically out of a job.
Less than that right now with Comanche 3. It's less than that. Yeah. But when you talk about 1, 2, and 3, yeah,
it's around 300 people, and those jobs on average pay roughly $80,000 a year. If you average it out between the lowest paying to the highest paying, I think it comes in around like $80,000. But there's people that work out there that make $150,000 a year.
Yeah,
there's people out there that make like $40,000 a year. So anyway, so those go away too. So part of them are already going away next year, and then there's going to be a big chunk of them that goes away for this. So now you look at unintended consequences of that. So if you know your job's going to end, you're going to go look for another job. So that person may move away, not spending money in Pueblo. So with the push for renewable and green energy in Colorado, obviously the 2 that come up are wind and solar. And there are incentives for wind and solar. And so we don't have the geography to match it or the space or everything when it comes to wind and solar. We can do a lot of it, but it won't be the same. But at the same time, the tax revenue generated by a wind or solar, or I think it's renewable energy, or is it green energy?
It's renewable. They're
Energy.
talking about wind and solar.
Yeah.
That's the ones that have that designation.
So the tax base is not as high. So you're looking at like $1.5 million a year versus 19 million. So even if you replace it with that goes away as well.
And the jobs.
The other thing is with wind and solar, to operate a solar field that provides that much power, you're talking like 5 to 7 jobs. I've heard as low as 3, but in reality, it's like 5 to 7 jobs. That doesn't count the construction. The construction obviously will be 6 months to a year and a half, and there's more jobs with that. But they don't have to use local. They could get other people to come in, whatever. But so this is where it gets fun, and this is what we've talked about. So at the recommendation of PISAC and its members, they looked at, I had nothing to do with it. Sarah did. So Sarah and
we talked a lot. So
y'all looked at two of the best solutions based on tax revenue, jobs, community, economic growth, the clean side of it. I think that's important to say too.
It is.
It was, tell me what that stands for. I know what it is, but what is it?
It's carbon capture or coal-fired gas. So that's
so it's natural gas with carbon capture.
With carbon
was
capture.
One of them, and then the one that the newspaper article and the fights about is advanced nuclear. So advanced nuclear is not only SMRs, but and some engineers are going to kill me, but it's like an advanced ion reactor. There's actually patents and the regulatory process started this week for fusion reactors, cold fusion reactors, which nobody's really talking about, but that's another big one that 15 years from now, that could be the way, because it's not the same as a small modular reactor, a small pebble reactor or whatever. But advanced nuclear, it looks at all of those. So the second you say that in Colorado, again, who controls the Colorado political discussion? Which party controls it?
The Democrats.
The Democrat Party. And I'm going to get a little partisan on this, but but not partisan. It's just important to recognize it. So when it comes to nuclear energy in Colorado, the platform of the Democrat Party is no nuclear in Colorado. That's on their platform. And that's a big one for Pueblo, which ties into this mayor election, because the outgoing mayor, even in his outgoing interview, said he's going to do what he can to keep nuclear free. The opponents of nuclear in Pueblo say, why put something in where we take the risks and other people get the benefits? And that's where the power goes, because it does not come to Pueblo. There is some that goes to Everast Steel Mill, but I think they're like 100% solar now. I think that solar field out there powers Everast. At least most of it are 80% solar. But this is interesting too. So for those of you that did not know, there was a nuclear plant in Colorado, and I need to find this. So Sarah, why don't you tell us about how you came to this decision and go over the other technologies?
So can you tell that we've talked about this at great length and everything that we've done? So let me back up really quick, Brian, and tell you, I need to back up and talk a little bit about this committee. So this committee started to meet, and these were community members, and you can go on the website and see exactly who they are. I'm not speaking for them. I'm speaking just for me. But these were community members that were leaders in the community that were not elected officials. And because we wanted to stay nonpartisan, that's really the reason that we...
And who was on the PISAC committee? Tell us who the members of this committee
So
were.
there was 11 members of the committee. I'm going to mess this up. We had Francis Concilia and Corinne Kohler as the co-chairs. We had Patty Urjavik, Dennis Mays, Jeff Shaw, myself, Jerry Bella, Dwayne Nava. I'm forgetting several. And I apologize. I'm forgetting several of it. But again, you can go on the website and see who they were. So these are all people who really are really dedicated to the community. And it was 10 months of not deliberation so much as really understanding what all the options were. But before we did that, we sat down and we said, what's the most important thing with regard to this discussion?
Yes.
What do we want the outcomes to be? When we looked at, and we wanted to look at it through this lens, what's the most important thing? And really it was to make Pueblo whole. We know that everything that happens here is carefully observed. So how do we make these transition communities who've been sort of built around production of energy, especially coal, how do we make them whole when we remove their ability to produce? What's the impact of that? What are we actually talking about? So that was the idea, is how do we make Pueblo whole? Pueblo has already given so more than anybody else in the state, really, because they closed down one, they closed down two, and they've been really great. Pueblo's been really great about opening their arms to solar, to wind, and these are really, really important. We want to see that happen. We want to see clean, safe, reliable energy, but we still have to make Pueblo whole. They've paid so much already, and there's got to be a way to do that. So that was how we approached it. And we spent 10 months being educated on all of the options. And ultimately we came to the two best, and we put forward the two best, and that was a gas, not dissimilar from what we see already here in Pueblo with carbon capture. But those jobs, that was the next best. Those jobs they're tremendously lower. Property tax that we would get, and here's the difference between them. So long-term or primary jobs, 20 to 25 for that. The salary was $80,000 to 100 or $120K, and property tax would yield $15.52 million per year. Advanced nuclear would be 200 to 300 jobs, ranging from $60,000 to $200,000, and $95 million plus dollars each year in tax revenue back to the community. So when we hear, well, we're not going to get the energy, we're not going to produce energy for Pueblo. There's already an energy producer for Pueblo. We're not talking about the energy. We're talking about how do we make Pueblo whole?
Also, I'd argue that why sacrifice this much land for giant solar farms? Wind doesn't work here in Pueblo. We know that. Yeah. But why, if we're not producing the energy for Pueblo, then why do we need to give up like a quarter of our land to produce the energy for somebody else?
That's a great question. I can't answer.
Yeah,
the logic
well, that's what I'm saying. The argument can go both ways. And just to make it, to say who was on the committee, it was Jerry Bella, who was a union guy, correct?
Yep.
Sarah Blackhurst, Russell DeSalvo, who runs Pueblo Plex, that's the reuse authority for
such
depot.
A good man.
Patty Erjavik, the president of PCC until May. Then she retires. Dennis Mays, who's a retired judge, and I think, is he on the school board?
Yeah,
he's on the school board for District 60. So he was elected. But he was elected towards the end of it, so he was an elected official on it.
Technically. But
Tim Mote, who is the president of CSU Pueblo, or was, because Armando took over yesterday, I think it was.
Yep.
Dwayne Nava, who's the president, CEO of the Pueblo Chamber of Commerce. Jeff Shaw is president of the Pueblo Economic Development Corporation. Chris Wiseman, who's a former county commissioner, community activist. He's done a lot.
He's ran the state fair. He's just an all-around good guy. And
then the co-chairs were Frances Concilia, who, if you're from there, you know her, and Corinne Kohler.
Yes.
Is that how you say it?
Kohler? I think it's Kohler or Collier. And Corinne, we're really sorry. We're such good friends. We haven't Said your last name correctly.
Yeah, and that was who was on the committee to look at this. So you're looking at basically both the job aspect, the economic development aspect,
Correct.
the leadership aspect. That's Chris Wiseman, again, former county commissioner, so he understands the challenges and needs of Pueblo County as a whole. And these were the people that sat on this committee. Excel was involved with it, but they weren't running the show. And that was another thing that people are saying, that this was just Excel's kind of hand-picked group to get what they want. Now, what was interesting when this was announced that the committee recommends advanced nuclear, Excel wouldn't say that they agreed with that. And I think that should have been taken up too, because the Chieftain article afterwards and some of the stuff in the social media ether is saying that Excel put this together basically to control a group to say that they're going to build a nuclear power plant. Excel has no buy-in on this one way or the other. This is actually to recommend to Excel what they want to put to a plan together for the community and submit it to get approved. So they could do whatever they want. Excel could look at this and be like, yeah, this makes sense. Awesome. Let's do solar.
We're not going to do, they can do whatever they want on it. This is our recommendation based on what would make this community whole, what's safe, reliable, and make the community whole. Now, let me say that this is a recommendation.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of questions I believe deserve answers about this. We had, and while this was going on, we knew that this was happening, but we couldn't touch this at all. Yeah. They went around and they did the Keating group. They conducted a poll of 500 registered voters, and this is what they found. And Keating's very well respected. There were also a number of roundtable discussions, one-on-one interviews with people who that are well known to have a lot of feelings about nuclear. Sorry. So let me tell you, Keating's poll. And we weren't allowed to touch it. We didn't get to see the questions, nothing. It was just straight. 63% of Puebloans are concerned about the closure of Comanche 3. 74% supported a new combined gas plant with carbon capture, and 66% supported advanced nuclear.
So this is another topic that's been brought up or not brought up. Pueblo's had the discussion to go nuclear in the past, and there was a lot of pushback from the community, and the timing of it was just terrible because it was the Fukushima plant. It's right when it went down, so nuclear was bad. You saw a lot of these countries close down their nuclear plants because of poor management, in my opinion, of an outdated and old facility that was built on a fault line. So it went away. So this was already in the work years ago. Now it's different. The naysayers say that it's not going to be ready in time. And part of that reason is COVID kind of stopped the research and development. We would have functional, tested, deployed SMRs right now, but COVID took 2 years away from that process. But they're coming. And there's already a spot in Colorado where they're looking at it. The political side of it, again, the party that's in control of the state, they say no nuclear, but at the same time, the party that's in control of the country, which is the same party, is pushing advanced nuclear. They're throwing a lot of money with the Department of Energy. The DOE's basically boots on the ground, going out to educate people. But so with all that in mind, the last time nuclear came up, there is a very large movement in Pueblo that is anti-nuclear. And that's fine. I'm not saying it's bad.
I'm going to say it's not a large movement. I'm going to say it's a very loud movement.
It's a loud, organized movement that's kind of a throwback from the 70s. And part of that was
throwback from the 70s key there.
Well, actually the 2000s. So
80s. Colorado,
I would say the 90s.
Okay.
So Colorado had a nuclear power plant. It's if anybody knows the saying, it's Fort St. Drain. That's what they call it, but Fort St. Vrain nuclear power plant, it was decommissioned in the 90s. They had some issues. From the people that were involved with it, it was basically private, and they just didn't spend the money, and there was an accident there. It wasn't a nuclear accident. It was like shoddy work from contractors and then a drip on a sensor. But they shut it down. It was in operation, I think, for, I don't know, maybe 10 years or something like that. It's 1979 to 1989 is when it was in operation, and they turned it into either a coal or a gas-fired plant. But there's a lot of that. There's a history, and we had Brian come on and talk about the uranium mines, that there is a history of misuse and abuse when it comes to nuclear material, specifically mining and storing nuclear material. But I don't think it's the same. This isn't the Wild West of uranium like he
well, and
it.
We're talking about, like, he's literally an archaeologist. So we're talking about 50 years ago or more.
But that's still in the minds, and it's cultural and resonates. And there's issues. But again, going back to all this stuff, the people that have not been asked about this up until this survey were the actual people of Pueblo, the average citizen. There has never been a discussion with the layman, and they don't have time. To be fair, people don't have time to go to public discussions or public comments, especially when they have them at like 3 p.m. on a Wednesday or 3 p.m. on a Thursday.
Right.
But nobody's actually reached out to the public. This survey did, and it's kind of like 66% isn't high, but out of 500, that's
pretty good.
Because if you talk to the opposition of this, they say nobody in Pueblo wants this. I think let the people decide. Honestly, this would be a great thing, I think, if they would vote on it. If you had a ballot like sent out, it costs money and it really has no legal aspect to it. But if there was if there was an election where you got, how many people voted in the mayor? Like 26,000. If you had 26,000 people in Pueblo vote yes or no on nuclear, I think that'd be awesome, because it would show where we stand. Now, if the people don't want it, then Excel has to take that in consideration. If
the majority of people, so this has been the interesting part to me, and where I get confused. I'm of the thought that we should at least discuss an option to make Pueblo whole. We should at least discuss an option for making these transition communities whole. And if so what I liked about, what was interesting about the natural gas, and they supported a combined, this is what it is, a combined cycle gas plant with carbon capture. That's what that stood for. Combined cycle gas plant with carbon capture would be the second one. And that was the one that 74% of the Puebloans surveyed. And 500 is a large number, by the way. People think, that's not that much, but as
far as surveys go, and the survey was like 25 minutes long. It wasn't short. I took it. I did it.
Oh, you did it?
Yeah.
I didn't know you did it. So it was that's really, really telling to me, that they want that. If that's what this community wants, that's what this community deserves.
But the trend right now is if the loudest people in the room don't agree with it, and they're the people that are at the discussion of this table, they refuse to discuss it or acknowledge it on the table.
That's right.
If you say nuclear, they don't want to talk about it. If you say gas, they don't want to talk about it. If you say solar and wind, they don't want to talk about it. It goes both sides. And they're like, well, for the people that anti-solar, it doesn't produce that much power and it gets cloudy. Like, I don't even want to talk about that. Let's talk about nuclear. Then the other side, like, well, we're not even going to discuss nuclear because we don't want nuclear in Pueblo, so that's not part of the discussion.
Well, and then they hijack the discussion. And that's happened several times, where I would really, so this is the other part that's been sort of eye-opening to me. I don't often have a hard time discussing something with someone, but if they're just flat refuse to discuss it, then you can't have a discussion if somebody's not willing to. That's a two-way street, right? To have that discussion.
But the point of an activist is not to have a discussion. And we get so caught up in trying to find what's right. We don't realize that when you're dealing with an activist, no matter what it is, the point is there is no discussion. And it's anything, and it's not just this. So if you're an activist, you do not want discussion on what you're pushing.
So why this is, you're absolutely right. And we've seen that a lot. And I'll tell you about that in just a second. But the gas plant, and there is a tremendous movement to get rid of gas in Colorado as well.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in a position of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But from where I'm sitting, I agree with the committee. I'm in lockstep with the committee that the most important thing is making Pueblo whole. And so here's what was interesting. You probably got it if you listen to the show. You might have gotten an email blast a couple weeks ago where I said, "This is what it is." I just gave a quick, even a shorter summary. This is what we did, and we did recommend advanced nuclear.
And not Action 22. This was just an email blast of this study going out saying, "Hey, I was a part of this. This is what the group I was a part of recommended." Done. It's not a position of Action 22.
No, it wasn't a position of Action 22. It's just this was the committee. This was what do you think? And I had a couple of positive responses over email. I had a few of those, but I got some really angry emails that I was referred to as delusional, wanting to keep I was ignorant, keeping Southern Colorado down. Like there was some really and so a couple of them I responded to. I was like, okay, help me understand your position. What is it that how do you think Pueblo could be made whole with clean energy, like utilizing clean energy, safe, reliable, clean energy? How could Pueblo be made whole? And they doubled down on their insults. That was the answer. Yeah, they doubled down on their insults, which I found very, very telling. I didn't take it personally, but I think the discussion is going to come in the coming days, and we're going to continue to have this discussion because it's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting about. Is how do you make Pueblo whole? If you're not going to discuss it, if you're not going to look at options, if you're just going to dismiss it out of hand without any discussion, I can't talk to you. Like I don't know what to do with that. If, however, somebody can come to me and say, I have this idea that's better than what you guys have come up with after 10 months of study, deliberation, discussion, that would make Pueblo and all of these transition communities whole. I am all ears. I want to hear that. I want to understand why, first of all, you're so angry about a discussion, and number two, what is your idea that's better than this? And I'm happy. I would love to hear that. I would love to hear that, because when you do that, you tell me, you're signaling to me that what you care about are these communities, and that's what I want to hear from.
They don't care about that, though.
I wish you weren't wrong on that.
No,
I wish you weren't wrong.
It's unfortunately that's not going to happen. That's why I think you just ask the people what they want. You don't ask the activists. They'll be drowned out by the voice of people. People tend to forget, especially in this line of work, that the loudest, screamingest, most passionate people are less than 1% of what you didn't even give them 10%, whatever, of the actual populace.
So, and that's also been my experience. I've had so many people approach me privately, not by email, but some by email, but also just come up or send me a message or whatever saying, this is so great. I want you to talk to this person. This is so great. So we've had lots and lots of conversations, and we're going to continue to have those conversations.
And there's a lack of education when it comes to these things as well, which you're going to see a lot of groups coming in and no side whatsoever, just doing the education part. So
and using decades old data.
Yeah. And they're already, they're getting out there. So you're going to see that.
So, but ask us any questions. Yep. Let us know what you think. I actually genuinely want to know what you think.
Yep.
People don't believe me, but I do want to know.
And just email show@action22.org or brian@makingactionhappen.com works as well. With that, I think we'll wrap it up now. Just if you're still listening, you're with us. But starting next week, I'm going to do a legislative update 3 times a week, and that'll be available just on YouTube in the morning, hopefully by between 8 and 9, so you can know what's going on and where to go to voice your opinion and be part of that stakeholder process as well. And the views and opinions expressed on Making Action Happen do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Action Colorado, its board, or its membership. And drop us a line. You could still email us at show@action22.org or brian@makingactionhappen.com. Visit our website. We actually have our own dedicated website to making action happen, and it's just makingactionhappen.com. So you could drop me a line there as well.
Awesome. Chad Borthman, I know you're listening. I'm wondering if you're being a punk today and took Groundhog Day off as well, in tradition with my dad. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon.
All right.